I feel the love in this place. Do you feel it? There's a lot of happy people here. It definitely is my kind of place, too. I remember I went to the men's room, and I heard a woman's voice. I'm like, did I? It was you. So it actually did happen. It's something that doesn't happen just every day. My name is Jeff Genung, and I am president and co-founder of an organization called Contemplative Life. And Contemplative Life is a nonprofit organization, a new nonprofit organization that is really focused on. It's a good thing you took a little while to introduce me because I didn't have anything set up here. I do now. It's an organization that plays at the interchange between spirituality and technology. And as a way of personal background, what would be helpful, I think, is to share some of the inspiration that has given rise to Contemplative Life, because it's kind of born of my own experience. I've been interested in the inner life since I was really young. And because of my interests, I became interested in the practices from various spiritual traditions. And so by virtue of that, it led me to monasteries and temples and ashrams, not so much as an observer from the outside looking in, but I wanted to really kind of put these practices and these rites and rituals on and be with them long enough to have a sense of what they're offering. And so as a result of that, I've always had contemplative practice in my life. When I was a student at Cornell University, I practiced. When I got married and I fell in love, we practiced together. When we started having children, our family had practices together. As an entrepreneur and a business person, I brought them along with me as an executive, even in the boardroom. And I've worked with these different types of practices with really young children, teenagers, and also many years as a hospice volunteer, working with these practices with people making their final passage. And as a result of all these streams of influences, I came to the realization that everyone's contemplative, but not everyone realizes it. And everyone has contemplative experiences, but they may not have recognized them as such at the time. And one of the big differentiators between those that have these experiences of kind of the great mystery periodically and those that have it more continuously is having some kind of deep and sustained practices in their life. And so these are some of the things that kind of gave rise to this. And I thought, well, if that's true, if everyone really is contemplative, there should be evidence of it all over the place. And so when I began to look at the world through that lens, I saw it all over the place. All of the great religious traditions have a contemplative dimension. They all have meditation and prayer, silence and solitude, and many other things that they share in common. And actually, there's a secular, kind of universal form of contemplative practice. If somebody wondered, well, what is contemplative practice? The moment of silence is probably the best example of that. And what's so amazing about the moment of silence is that it transcends language, it transcends culture, it invokes a sense of shared humility and oneness. And everybody, anywhere, if they don't know anything, they can say, well, yeah, okay, if that's a contemplative practice or a contemplative experience, yeah, that makes sense. So what is contemplative? What is contemplation? Well, there was a filmmaker that kind of became interested in this work here, and he did a short piece that I wanted to share with you that I think well defines what this is. There's a mystery under it all. And that's part of the beautiful thing. In some traditions and practices, often eyes are closed, and some eyes are open. happens in nature. It happens with people. It happens in solitude. It happens in the midst of incredible busyness and incredible stillness. The conditions don't necessarily determine the experience, but sometimes they can cultivate it. It's very personal. It's unique to every human being. And by virtue of that, it looks all different kinds of ways to all different kinds of people. Well, sometimes it looks pensive and stoic, quiet, silent. But other times it's joyful and happy and jubilant. It's beautiful. It's so beautiful. There's a quality to it. And because it's personal, the quality is very difficult to put into words because it's ineffable. Oftentimes when we try to put it into words, we're talking about it, and oftentimes not experiencing it. Right now is all we have, because truly, if we're not experiencing it now, when would we be experiencing it? It changes the experience. It enables something that maybe wouldn't have been possible otherwise. So that sets a good foundation, and thanks for bearing with me, or I had to bear with myself. But there's huge change at foot right now, and the Millennials are driving this change. You're driving the change. And Pew Research did some studies back in 2012, and again last year, and they looked at religious life in America. And their findings were just stunning. They found that 1 in 5 Americans have no religious affiliation. 30% of those under 30 are not affiliated with any religious tradition, and it's the fastest growing segment in society. It's also part of the largest generation in the history of the country. And this change is driving all kinds of other change. And what's interesting is that when they surveyed all the people of all ages and those that weren't religiously affiliated, they said, well, but are you spiritual? Overwhelmingly, everybody says, yeah, I'm spiritual. But it seems that what people are interested in is experience. And also, they're interested in something that is tangible, not just theology and dogma. Historically, we have segmented the different parts of our life. And it was only really up to the last 10 years that we integrated social. It used to be that our social side, our professional and business side, and our spiritual, or what I would call contemplative side, were all siloed off. But now, because of social media, largely Facebook and Twitter, within the last 10 years, now social in business and professional are so integrated. So the last major thing is the contemplative or the spiritual dimension. And it's so important because it's so much of who we really are in terms of our beingness. And once that is fully integrated into work and professional and social, then there's also going to be much better balance, and we'll bring our whole self to what we're doing. Now, we're also seeing the effects of these practices across all kinds. It really intersects all aspects of society, and the impact is profound. You wouldn't think lawyers, right? But there's actually an organization called contemplativelawyers.com. When I was putting together this nonprofit, I went looking around. I'm like, this is amazing. And sure enough, there's a big contingent of lawyers. There's huge things going on in education, K through 12. Higher education is ablaze with all kinds of contemplative pedagogy. They're doing tests on, there's lots of science going on now, testing master meditators to see kind of how they're wired and what makes them tick and what's the impact of this for health and well-being. And then we're seeing the impact in major areas of society as well. So you're seeing some crossover now between mysticism and the new physics, amazingly enough. They're kind of discovering, oh my God, we're using the same kind of language to describe the ineffable. There's big things going on in higher education right now. I mean, you have the University of Virginia got a $12 million grant from one of their alumnus to actually develop a center for contemplative studies and contemplative science. And this is right at the heart of the university. President and all of the trustees are behind this. And what's interesting about it is, just like Mikey with consciousness hacking, I love the way you did it, in asking, well, what is this? And they're approaching it the same way. And I love that because, it looks different ways to different people. And so the way that they're approaching it in the University of Virginia is going to be different for the business school than it is for the nursing school, than it is for the architecture school. They'll find their own way to kind of integrate it into their curriculum and their ways of teaching and learning. And so now you have the mindfulness movement, Wisdom 2.0. It's unleashed, it's absolutely mainstream, and then with this is this explosion of practices of all different kinds. And that's both a wonderful thing, but it also brings up a problem. And it's part of the problem that contemplative life is working to address. And that is, where do you go? What do you do? What practice is right for me? Because there is no one size fits all. There's no panacea either. So different strokes for different folks. What is right for one person may not be right for other. And there's lots of variables. Things like, how old are you? Are you young? Are you old? Are you married? Are you single? Do you have some kind of crisis in your life? Are you a head person? Are you a heart person? Are you a body person? All these things matter when it talks about finding practices that are right for you, right for me, for where we are in our own personal stage of life. And so this is why Contemplative Life. Contemplative Life has created a platform to serve as a central hub to bring all these myriads of different types of contemplative and transformative and mindfulness practices under one umbrella, so people could go to a place and then easily navigate to find, what's interesting, to me, what works for me. And then not only that, but to connect with other people of like mind, build community. So, contemplative practices are kind of like healthy diet and exercise. Overwhelmingly, people feel like that's a good idea. I wish I had that in my life. But like diet and exercise, very few people go from that's a good idea to actually doing it every day. So it's a process. And understanding that it's a process, we've approached this in 3 different phases. The first is information. What's out there? And how do I get information on it? How do I find out about the teaching, the teachers, who's qualified? The next is formation. So once people find out what it is that they're interested in, and if there's a certain methodology and a certain mentor or something like that that teaches it, how do I connect with them and then get them going in my life on a regular basis? And then the third part is after there is some formation, and we're actually practicing over time, the practice will deliver what the practice delivers. And they don't all deliver the same thing. So the central core of what we're doing, the mission, it's all about practice. Practice, getting people to practice, enabling people to practice, enabling people to connect with other people that are practicing. Practice, practice, practice is really kind of the heart of the whole thing. So imagine a hub that served almost like a fractal, where you could go to this place and, like a tree of practices, where you could say, hey, I'm interested in health and well-being, or I'm interested in this from teaching and learning perspective, or I'm in environmental, or I'm yoga. I just want yoga. I just want different types of yoga. Imagine being able to connect with other people that are interested in that same thing, both locally as well as virtually, communities. And then imagine this ultimately becoming a reflection of who you are. This is the type of thing that Contemplative Life is working on. And so I'd like to show you what we've built. So this is our website. So when you go to our website, which I just went by, there is that where we're going to come on the website is really kind of the centerpiece of the website. And you'll see is that when you come there, a flower opens up, petal after petal. And what it is you enter into what we're calling a body of practices. And the body of practices are heart, mind, body, spirit, and relational, or community. And these are different lenses that you can look at these different practices from. And so the idea is that, you know, everybody has a heart, everybody has a mind, everybody has a body, so you can relate with it. And this is, you know, one of the main problems that we're trying to solve is being able to connect with people. Because, you know, when I first created this thing, I'll show you this network of practices that has all these different themes of practices. They're not actual practices, they're themes. And under each of these themes are all these different types of practices. But as we beta tested this, and we're currently beta testing it, is that some people couldn't really relate to it. It's like an overwhelming amount of information, and it really is. I mean, as you get into this and you work out the taxonomy, it's a huge amount of threads that we're trying to bring together and use elegant, interactive digital technology as a way to be able to easily navigate it, just so that people could, you know, find something that's meaningful. Bingo. Thank you, sir.
To hack the consciousness of the computer.
So there it is. Here's the flower. And so when you come in, you see the flower, and then up pops a body of practices. And so let's go to mind. So we clicked on mind, and we go down, and here's some impressions relative to mind. And so now we're going to click on practices that are through that lens or screen. So here, we're in the body of practices of mind, and we come down, and here's a network of practices that are screened by mind-type practices. So now I'm going to go over to meditation, and you can see these are actual practices under meditation, and one of which is Zazen. So I click on Zazen, it takes me to the Zazen page. And here you have a quote from a master, and then what are the benefits of it? You know, we hear a lot about Zazen. What does it awaken, deepen? What does it heal? What is it? So little bite-sized chunks about these different practices. So a little definition of what it is. How do I practice it? Just enough to see if this is interesting. And then what are some of the challenges and commitments? And this is an important thing. This is something we don't get enough about. I've always said that if the mindfulness movement had to abide by truth in advertising, it'd get busted. Because the truth is that anybody who's done this work, this is hard work, and it takes a long time. And so understanding what you're in for in the beginning is actually pretty good. Tips and reminders. So this isn't about something that we just do some other time. It's literally about this. How do we bring that into this? And then, from there we can see, a video, and connect with communities or practice leaders. We can get news and information. And then you can jump off to all different kinds of resources. So that's one example. If we come back here, we go to the flower, the central piece of it is kind of like a hub, because there's lots of different places you can go, so you know from a navigation standpoint how to get back to where you wanted to go. So here what we'll do is we'll go down now, and you see underneath the flower, it's been divided up so that you have mindfulness, secular, spiritual traditions, and all practices. Because, people of different persuasions are interested in different things, and so we kind of divided it out that way. And then if we go to all practices, and then we can look, and we've got a section here for community and thought leaders. We can see things like, the Mindful Nation Foundation, an organization that was founded after Congressman Tim Ryan's book, Mindful Nation. So information on that sort of thing. So I encourage you to go and just kind of check it out. That's kind of the website. Just two other things before I close. One is, if you're interested in what we're doing, a couple things that you could do to help. We've got a $100,000 matching grant. So if you or anyone you know are interested in the kind of work we're doing, we are a nonprofit. We also, are interested in any kind of social media assistance, and then, feedback and sharing with others. And then the last thing I want to leave you with is something just is kind of interesting, where I kind of think this is going. Apropos for Consciousness Hacking Group. Thank you.